red shirt protesters plan to continue their bloody protests in northern Thailand after spilling blood at the Prime Minister's house. Also, Singapore's key exports continues to grow in February from a year earlier, helped by a strong bounce in the pharmaceuticals and electronic sectors. And a boxing icon tries his hand in a new ring, and Manny Pacquiao takes a plunge into the murky waters of politics. Hello and a very warm welcome to Southeast Asia Tonight on Channel News Asia. I'm Gerard Lam. Also ahead on tonight's bulletin, rich pickings from Mother Earth and it's turned into a traditional snack in Indonesia. Find out what it starts to be good for later in the bulletin. But first, let's head to Thailand, where Deputy Prime Minister Suthep Suban has warned Bangkok residents to remain vigilant, even as the number of anti-government protesters dwindle. In its fifth day today, the protest movement claims to be regrouping and fetching reinforcements, while a group of them continue their symbolic blood campaign.
Having already spilled blood at the Prime Minister's office, Thailand's red shirt protesters took their blood campaign to Anasuya's house. Mr. Abhisit has twice rejected their calls to dissolve Parliament. This time, no one was home either. On the other hand, protesters, many of them rural villagers, could not stay too long away from their homes and farms. Police say over 10,000 protesters remain in the Thai capital of the 100,000 or more who were there at the weekend.
ใกล้แล้วเพราะว่าเขาคิดว่าเขาจะให้เราอ่อนแรงทุกคนเนี่ยอ่อนแรงและอยากกลับบ้านแต่จริงๆแล้วมันไม่ใช่ทุกคนน่ะมีกำลังเสริมอยู่แล้วเนี่ยคนกลับบ้านไปก็คือไปชาร์จแบตใหม่แล้วก็เวียนมา
But groups like the Trang Red Shirt protesters say they won't go home until they topple the Abhisit government. Meanwhile, some of the protesters have taken their campaigns back to the provinces, with red shirt supporters in Chiang Mai also splashing blood outside the provincial government center.
บังคับกันเนี่ยมันไม่ได้หรอกทุกประเทศไม่งั้นก็เลือกตั้งมาได้9 วัน10 วันเดือน2 เดือนก็มาประท้วงก็ต้องเลิกแล้วก็ทำกันใหม่ก็ไม่จบ
But Mr. Suthep adds the government is ready for talks with the United Front for Democracy Against Dictatorship on condition that ousted Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra first gives the go-ahead. The Deputy Prime Minister also warned against sabotage attacks. He says at least 2 high-rise buildings might be targets.
ผมเชื่อว่ามีคนที่มีความคิดที่จะก่อความไม่สงบที่จะก่อกวนที่จะทำร้ายบ้านเมืองอยู่
Mr. Suthep could not say, however, if the saboteurs would take orders from Mr. Thaksin.
For more, we cross live now to our Indochina Bureau Chief Anasuya Sanyal in Bangkok. Anasuya, besides the bloody protests, there are also reports of the red shirts picketing at the U.S. Embassy. Could you tell us about that?
That's right, Gerard. After their protest in front of the Prime Minister's residence on Sukhumvit Road, the red shirts continued to the U.S. Embassy on Wireless Road. Their mission there was twofold. One was to send a letter to the American ambassador claiming that the current government of Thailand under Prime Minister Abhisit was an illegitimate one. The other mission was to garner some information. The Thai government has said about these sabotage threats coming from the red shirts. They have sourced or hinted at the source of these threats being international intelligence agencies, and they've hinted that they were the Americans. The red shirts showed up at the embassy to try to get some answers about whether or not it was the Americans who got that piece of intelligence. They wanted to, of course, vigorously debate it because so far things have been very peaceful here in Bangkok. The splashing of blood on gates and government house and residences in the Democrat Party headquarters notwithstanding. Gerard?
Now, Anasuya, the protest numbers seem to be dwindling. Then what's next for the red shirts?
Well, one thing to watch is whether or not the red shirts take the protest and fan it out from Bangkok. Bangkok really is the elite stronghold, the epicenter of the PAD. It's not red shirt territory. Now, if the red shirts plan to extend their campaign, let's say to Chiang Mai and other places around the kingdom, it could rebuild momentum. But other than that, after these bloody protests that we've seen over the past 2 days, no one's really sure what the red shirts have in store. The opposite government has not given in to any of the demands, and nor do they have any reason to. The red shirts are looked down upon by the government and by many people in the elite. They simply don't have the bargaining power in order to achieve their political aims. And many people in the government don't believe that their political grievances are legitimate at all. Gerard?
All right, Anasuya, thank you much. That was our Indochina Bureau Chief Anasuya Sanyal reporting to us live from Bangkok. In other news, Singapore's non-oil domestic exports rose 23% on year in February. The headline figure was better than expected. It was boosted by increased pharmaceuticals and petrochemicals exports. The volatile pharmaceutical sector grew 29% on year last month, reversing a drop in January. The electronics sector also saw exports grow about 26% on year. Exports to all of Singapore's top 10 markets increased, providing more signs of a global economic recovery. In particular, exports to Taiwan more than doubled, while exports to Indonesia soared 71%, and the European Union were up by 35%. Singapore's exports to the United States also improved by 5.7%, while those to China increased 9.3%. Well, output in Singapore's biomedical sciences industry more than tripled between 2000 and 2009 to about 21 billion Sing dollars. That's about 15.1 billion US dollars. The Economic Development Board says in that period, the sector grew by a compound annual rate of 14%. Now, compared with 2008, output rose about 2.5% last year, despite the economic recession. Wong Siew Ying reports.
2009 was rough for many sectors, but the biomedical sciences industry still pulled in investments. Among them, names like GlaxoSmithKline, Medtronic and Lonza increased their presence in Singapore. EDB says total fixed asset investment amounted to about 1.2 billion Sing dollars last year, with total business spending of 700 million Sing dollars. Together, they contributed 1.3 billion dollars in value add to Singapore's economy a year. Despite the bright outlook, there are challenges.
But the industry is going through some upheaval with our overcapacity in the biopharma industry or pharmaceutical industry. So in that regard, pharmaceutical industry output growth will probably moderate, and investments will also be moderated.
But EDB is still confident of meeting its output target of 25 billion Sing dollars for the biomedical sciences sector by 2015. This year, EDB expects output to increase 5 to 10% over 2009 as more manufacturing plants come on stream, and medical technology is seen as a growth segment.
They need to move up the value chain, and that requires things like research and development, and also to develop I think they also develop into different areas. I think like medical technology, right on our expertise within, for example, in precision engineering and using that kind of skills developed within that and applied to medical technology.
Economists say there's more upside to the biomedical sciences industry in view of the aging population and higher demand for medical care. They say growth in the sector is also unlikely to be derailed by short-term challenges, barring another credit crisis, which could put a squeeze on funding.
Indonesian prosecutors sought 10 years jail for alleged terrorist Saifuddin Zuhri. Zuhri is accused of hiding terror leader Nordin Muhammad Top and supplying explosive materials. He was a close friend as well as an accomplice of Nordin. Zuhri also stood as a witness at the terror leader's third marriage in 2006. He was arrested in central Java province a month before the 2008 twin terror attacks in Jakarta. The 39-year-old also said he had studied about jihad or holy war under leaders of regional terror group Jemaah Islamiyah. He told the court he had traveled to Afghanistan for military training with Dok Martin, one of the alleged masterminds of the Bali bombings. The trial resumes on March 24th. Still to come on Southeast Asia tonight, the Philippine president says the government is determined to broker a peace deal in the country's south. And high drama